There is a way for the Atlanta Braves to put Drake Baldwin on the opening day roster and not lose one of the veteran backups. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Wednesday, March 5th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And a little bit of a news roundup here, right? I want to get to another roster move, another guy being sent to minor league camp that happened on Tuesday. I want to get to who Hector Neris is as a reliever, the pros and cons of bringing him on and giving him a chance to win a job. But first, we're still talking about the Sean Murphy injury. And today, we're not really talking about the Sean Murphy aspect of it, right? We're talking about the aspect of who are the catchers on the roster on opening day. Because in camp right now, you have four different options. You have Chadwick Tromp, who is on the 40-man roster. You have Curt Casali. You have Sandy León, 36-year-old veterans who are not on the 40-man roster. And you have Drake Baldwin, your top hitting prospect, who also not on the 40-man roster. And so you're going to have to add someone. But a lot of the conversation, whether it was on our show yesterday with Tyler Redmond of Braves on Deck with Tyler Redmond, and around Braves country, has been losing whatever veteran backup that you have on the roster in order to keep Drake Baldwin in Atlanta for opening day. And there is a way to keep one of those guys. Everybody's been talking about, if you promote Drake Baldwin, then it's Baldwin and Tromp on opening day are your two catchers, and both Casali and León can leave. And that is not a scenario that it feels like Alex Anthopoulos would be okay with, right? Well, I discussed this on the show with Tyler yesterday. You went through 7 different catchers in 2021. I think I got the first name wrong on one of them, but you went through 7 different catchers in 2021. And so ever since then, Atlanta's been almost paranoid about catching depth, and really depth in general, but especially catching depth. And if Curt Casali and Sandy León would leave, right, if they all take off, then your options outside of who's in the majors for catching depth, you would have minor league Rule 5 pick Dylan Shockley, 27 years old. He turns 28 pretty soon. In Gwinnett, you would have 24-year-old Adam Zabrowski, Rule 5 eligible, not selected. You would have 24-year-old Tyler Tolvey, Rule 5 eligible, not selected. And you would have minor league free agent Chandler Siegel, a free agent you signed in January. Those 4 guys combined have 2 days of major league experience. They're all Siegels. Siegel his service time is .002. And so the common consensus around parts of Braves country, the podcast apparatus, things like that, the media apparatus for the Braves, is that Atlanta's going to need to either add catching depth in the minors or send Baldwin down. And I've at times advocated, I understand the value of being able to send Drake Baldwin down and keeping one of those veterans for at least a little while, especially if Sean Murphy's only going to be out for 2 weeks, right? Because the question here is calling Drake Baldwin up on opening day. You get an evaluation period. Maybe his bat is ready for the majors, but is it worth not having any veteran depth in case of an injury? That's the trade-off here. But there is a scenario where you can have Baldwin and keep at least one of those veterans. You need a couple things to happen. But there are options for those guys. And believe it or not, the easiest one to keep, if you want to, just might be Curt Casali, okay? The caveat on all of this, real quick, is we do not know for a fact that if these players have or have not signed paperwork or have clauses in their contracts that prevent some of these things from happening. That is the caveat here. We don't have specific information as to their contracts and what clauses are in their contracts. But in their situations, here are the rules that apply, okay? Casali is the one that I'm looking at first, okay? He's an Article XXB free agent. I've talked about this in the past. That means that you finished last year on a major league roster, but you were on a minor league deal this year, okay? So that's Curt Casali. That's Buck Farmer. I think that's Hector Neris, but again, we don't have confirmation of that. I don't know if there's a rule about after spring training starts, if that no longer applies or whatever. But unless there's a clause in his contract that prevents otherwise, you do have the ability to keep an XXB free agent with a retention bonus. So the way this works is normally for an XXB free agent, you have until noon Eastern, 5 days before opening day. And this is not the Japan series opening day. This is the standard opening day. You have to either agree in writing to add a player to your opening day 26-man roster or them go on the injured list. And again, teams are not allowed to game the injured list. That can be investigated by the commissioner's office. There can be agreements from the MLBPA. So they're not going to do injured list shenanigans here. If you don't agree in writing to do that, you have to release the player. You have to grant them their, quote, immediate unconditional release. Or you can pay them a $100,000 retention bonus. And what the retention bonus does is it overrides that mandatory release date and pushes it out to June 1st. And in that scenario, if you pay them the bonus, and again, this is provided there's not a clause in Curt Casali's contract that overrides this. He can do that. If you pay them that bonus, then they need to request by May 28th to be added to the 26-man roster or injured list, or they are then granted unconditional release on June 1st. There is the ability to keep Curt Casali through paying him a $100,000 bonus. The way this could work is Baldwin and Trump can open the year on the major league roster. Curt Casali would go to AAA, and likely you would lose Sandy León. Now, there is an option to keep Sandy León as well, but you require a little bit of help on this, okay? Because in essence, he has the ability to refuse an assignment to the minor leagues. He has more than 5 years of service time, so he can reject an assignment to the minor leagues. And Atlanta has the ability to have him sign a waiver agreeing to, in essence, like preemptively agreeing to be sent to the minor leagues. And what would need to happen in that situation is he would need to clear waivers so nobody else could claim him. And then if he cleared waivers, having signed that agreement means that he would already up front be declining his opportunity to reject the assignment. It's not incredibly common, but David Fletcher did this with Atlanta. When Atlanta brought David Fletcher in that deal with the Angels, there was a lot of confusion among the beat. I remember me and Justin Toscano texting about this. We were confused how Atlanta was able to send down David Fletcher and him not elect free agency. And it turns out, Justin found this out, that Atlanta, before the season, had David Fletcher sign agreeing to be sent to the minor leagues and agreeing to not reject the assignment. There are options here to keep one of these veterans, right? The easiest one to keep is Curt Casali, okay? As far as I understand, unless his contract specifically has language preventing this, he doesn't have the ability to refuse to accept the bonus and go to free agency. If you hit that 5-day before opening day mark, again, it's noon Eastern, and you have not in writing agreed to add him to the opening day roster, you can pay him the $100,000 bonus. And the actual deadline to pay that's like April 15th. You can agree to pay him the roster bonus and keep him in the organization. He would go to AAA. Now, the caveat here, I don't know if he would have the ability, given his veteran status, to reject the assignment to the minors. I don't believe he can do that in this specific situation. But there is a path to having Drake Baldwin on the opening day roster and not losing one of Curt Casali or Sandy León. Again, León, you need help, right? Nobody can claim him, all that kind of stuff. Casali, I believe you can just pay him to stick around. And you push that date out again from 5 days before opening day to June 1st. Now, there's no option that I can see in the CBA to pay another bonus in June to keep him by then. He would be gone on June 1st if he's not on the roster if he wanted to leave. But you do, if I have this correct, you do have the option to keep him past opening day. In just a minute, let's talk about the addition of Hector Neris, right? The pros, the cons of this, what to expect. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about some news and notes on Braves spring training. We cover the veteran catchers. Here we're talking about the addition of Hector Neris, right? The Braves signed him to a minor league deal, brought him into spring training. He first showed up to spring training on Monday. He was in camp on Monday. We haven't seen him playing games yet. 36 years old, and over his career, he's been a good reliever. 11 years, 43-41 record, 3.33 ERA in 602 thirds innings. The beginning of his career in Philly, fine, right? 3.42 ERA, 84 saves across 405 appearances, right? He was fine. When he got to Houston, there were a couple things that were done differently. One, he wasn't the closer, right? Like when he went to Houston, Ryan Presley was there. So he was working as a setup man more often than a closer. He only picked up, I think he picked up 8 total saves in the 3 seasons. Six saves in the 3 seasons he was with Houston. But his ERA was a 2.90. He had 174 strikeouts in 149 innings. His walk rate came down a little bit, and he performed pretty well for Houston. He got a 1-year, $9 million deal from the Cubs last winter and really struggled in Chicago. He ended up being the closer. What was it? It was Adbert Alzolay had Tommy John, I think. So he stepped into the closer role, but his command was really iffy. Walk rate was like 13%. They eventually DFA'd him. He was picked back up by the Astros. His command improved a lot. Walk rate, small sample size, walk rate dropped to 3.1%. But he gave a bunch of home runs, like 4 homers in 16 games, so really high home run rate. Again, small sample size here. And his overall season stats ended up 10-5 with a 4.10 ERA, 59 in the 3rd inning, 64 strikeouts to 28 walks, did pick up 18 saves. What he does, his stuff wasn't that much different last season from in his career. He's predominantly a 4-seam splitter guy. Those 2 pitches accounted for 88.5% of his total usage last year. He also has a sinker, 8% usage. He also has a slider, 3.5% usage. And he didn't really have a velocity issue as well. His velocity was, I think it was like 92.9, 93, right in line with where he's been the last couple seasons while he's been in Houston. It looked to me like the main issue for him in 2024 was the location of his fastball. He was a little more sporadic in the zone, and I think, leaving some pitches elevated and things like that, a little more sporadic with that. It's very much the splitter absolutely is his best pitch. I am fully of the opinion that splitter is the best one of his pitches. Although last year, it did grade out negatively for the first time in a while, which is odd. The four-seam fastball had the best run value and the best run value per 100 pitches. It feels like the splitter should be his best pitch, but the metrics say the fastball was. Either way, I do think this is fixable here. There's some pros and cons on this, right? Pro number one, the closing experience, 107 career saves. We've talked about this on previous shows. There are hardly any saves to be had on the Braves pitching bullpen group outside of Raisel Iglesias. You don't really have that veteran former closer who can step in if your back end guys are down. So I do think Hector Neris would give you that. The downside to this, obviously, is he wasn't great last year when he was in that role, right? He was a little iffy, and that was the first time he's been in that role in 3 or 4 years. Again, he worked as the closer from time to time in Philly through 2021, but his 2 years in Houston, he picked up a grand total of 5 saves. So he hasn't really been in the closing role outside of that little bit of time in Chicago since 2021. So he's done it, but it's been a while, okay? A pro here, that fastball splitter combo is, I think, a new dimension for Atlanta. Spencer Schwellenbach throws a splitter, but there's nobody in the pen that throws a splitter. Hurston Waldrop's an option in the pen, maybe in the future. We're still waiting for the Braves to figure out how much run they're going to give him as a starter before I think they do eventually move him to the pen. But there's not a guy with a splitter in the Braves pen. I don't think you've had a splitter guy on the roster. It's Schwellenbach, and then I think Kevin Gausman's the last one who threw a splitter, right? So it does give you a little bit of a different dimension. The con on this is the splitter's a notoriously harder pitch to command. Not everybody can consistently hit the zone with the splitter. Waldrop's a great example of that, right? The problem Hurston Waldrop has is not only can he not consistently hit the zone with the splitter, he can't do it with his fastball either. This is not a Hurston Waldrop slam fest. I'm just explaining there. And Hector Neris' walk rate has been trending worse in recent seasons. His career number, 9.1%. But in the last few years, and this may explain why Houston was okay moving on from him, his last few seasons, 11.4% and 10.8%. And the only reason last year was just 10.8 was because in a very small sample in Houston last year, after being DFA'd, he was very good on walks. He had a 13.3% walk rate with Chicago in 44 innings, and then a 3.1%, not 13.1, 3.1% with Houston in 15 innings. And that, just 15 innings, doesn't feel like it's necessarily statistically valid, okay? So pros and cons there. Pro, pretty cheap. We don't know the official numbers. I believe Hector Neris is also an XXB free agent. He finished last year on a major league roster with Houston. He might be in a situation like Casali and Farmer, where he has a salary of over $1 million were he to make the opening day roster, but it's likely not very much. You don't see guys on minor league deals often sign for $5 million, right? So he's probably going to be pretty cheap. The league minimum or something close to it, were he to make the roster. The con is, if you do that, you probably have to lose someone else, right? Buck Farmer's probably the guy that you end up losing were you to keep Hector Neris. And I actually think if you look at Fangraphs, I believe that's the prediction they have. Now that Neris has signed, they have Neris as the only NRI making the pen, along with Angel Perdomo, Anderson Pilar. Those 3 spots are that, and they have Buck Farmer not making the roster. Does Atlanta want to pay Buck Farmer $100,000, the XXB retention bonus, to keep him in the organization, put him in AAA? or do they want to let him walk? I don't know what's going to happen with Dylan Covey and Jake Diekman. I don't think they have the ability to opt out. I don't believe so, but I'm not sure. But anyway, the downside there, and then another downside for Hector Neris, is his strikeout rate has been dropping. In his peak, he was in the mid-30s, 37% in 2018. And even when he got to Houston, 31%, 30%, things like that. But the last couple seasons, 28.2% in 2023, 24.6% last year. And again, I think that's brought up a little bit by some small sample size success in Houston last year. Hit a 28% strikeout rate in 15 innings. In Chicago, it was 23.5. Hector Neris absolutely needs to earn his spot on the roster. He needs to pitch well in spring. I'm curious to see when he debuts. I'm curious to see what he looks like. Fun fact that I just happened to find here. I was looking to see, I always do this when they sign somebody. How has Hector Neris done in Truist Park? 19 in the third inning, so small sample size caveats apply, but it's not pretty. This is all regular season. I didn't pull postseason. In the regular season, 19 in the third innings, Hector Neris' career in Truist Park. He is 3-2 with a 6.98 ERA. He's allowed 17 hits and 16 runs. 15 of those were earned. 26 strikeouts, 13 walks, and 3 home runs. Not the greatest experience in Truist Park. Obviously, he's having to play. He always did it as a visiting player, so he was playing very good Braves teams. But just thought that was fun and interesting to note. In just a second, let's talk about another roster move being made. José Devers was sent down to minor league camp. We'll break that down next and what it means for the roster right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby breaking down some of the notes here from Braves spring training. And yeah, José Devers sent down to the minors yesterday. There's now 48 players in camp. Reminder, he was signed as a minor league free agent. Former, not top, but former highly rated prospect of the Miami Marlins. That was a situation where signed him back in November as a minor league free agent. He has just over 1 season of team control. He also has an option, and he was not on the 40-man roster. So you could just reassign him. You did not have to use that option year. So now they have sent Eddie Alvarez down, 35-year-old veteran. They have sent José Devers down. And the guys you have left in camp, Nick Allen and Christian Cairo. Those are really the 2 infield backups left in camp that can play shortstop, right? I do believe they haven't sent Charles LeBlanc down, but Charles LeBlanc is like a first base, third base, maybe a little bit of second base. He's not a shortstop. So I'm not really putting him in this same conversation, okay? And what does this mean for the battle now, right? Nick Allen versus Christian Cairo. We haven't really talked at length about this, so let's look at it. Nick Allen acquired via trade from Oakland in November 2024. Cairo was a Rule 5 selection. I do think that unless one of them has signed agreeing not to reject an assignment to the minor leagues, they're both on the 40-man roster. Whoever you don't put on the opening day roster, I think you're going to lose this guy. Allen doesn't have any options. So you have to DFA him, and he has the ability, like he can be claimed off of waivers, right? Cairo, Rule 5 selection. If he doesn't stick on the opening day roster, you have to offer him back to the Guardians. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will take him back, but you have to offer him back. Odds are they would. So you probably lose whichever of these guys you don't put on the opening day roster. People are going to ask how much that matters. I don't know if it does, but worth pointing out, right? Neither one of them offensively has shown that much promise in their careers. Cairo, career in the minor leagues, career in AAA, 233 hitter. Caveat here, that was only last season. He only made AAA for the first time last year. Nick Allen, career in the majors, 209 hitter, right? His AAA numbers, he's hit 307 in AAA, but with the caveat of that was all in the Pacific Coast League. And the Pacific Coast League is incredibly skewed as far as offensive numbers are concerned. I'm pretty sure I saw where was a team last year that hit like 290 in AAA in the Pacific Coast League. I threw that out. That's why I said 209 in the majors versus 233 in AAA, right? In the majors, it's 247 games for Allen as well. So it's not like it's, 30 game sample we're trying to read off of here. But both have been doing well in spring. As of last night when I wrote these notes down, Allen is 5 for 12 with 2 RBI, 2 run, and a double. Cairo is 4 for 12 with 2 RBIs, 2 runs, a double, and a stolen base. Allen stolen bases in his career. He's 8 for 11 in the majors. He has 103 stolen bases in his 7-season career. They're both, I see them as roughly equivalent offensively. I do think Allen probably has a slightly higher floor simply because he's seen major league pitching and Cairo has not. No guarantee Allen's going to be good, but I do feel like he can hang a little better than the floor of what Christian Cairo might be. I don't think either one of them has that much of a ceiling. The one area where I do see a difference, though, is defense, okay? Nick Allen is primarily a shortstop. That's something in the minors, 374 games at shortstop. So he is a shortstop first, okay? In the majors, 198 games at shortstop. And then outside of that, he has 144 games at second base. He has 16 games at third base. And he has 19 innings and 2 starts, both in the minors, in center field. So a little bit of time on the grass, but he's a shortstop first, shortstop, second base, third base. By contrast, Christian Cairo has played way more second base than shortstop in his minor league career, okay? 123 games at second, 114 games at third, and then 83 games at shortstop. So he might be able to play shortstop, but the teams he's been on have valued him more as a second baseman or a third baseman than they have shortstop. He also has 5 games in the outfield. They were all in left field. I'm sorry, he has 18 games in the outfield. They were all in left field. And he has like an inning and third at first, which is really funny because he's like 5'9". I just always think it's hilarious when the little guys go play first base. It's Ozzy lining up at first base. He's so small, right? Having not really seen a ton of them playing defense, having not seen enough to make a determination one way or the other, especially on Cairo, the impression those numbers give you is that Allen's a better defensive shortstop than Cairo. And I've actually been told that there are people who believe that Allen may be the best defensive infielder on Atlanta's roster right now. So I still have this battle as Allen getting the primary backup spot and Cairo being returned to the Guardians. But it's really up in the air. At the end of the day, does this really matter? I don't know. I think in a perfect world, Orlando Arce doesn't miss any time. Ozzy Albies doesn't miss any time. And Nick Allen barely gets in any games. But it's still definitely interesting that you're down to these two. And that's really all you have left in the majors on this battle. And then in the minors, you still have Eddie Alvarez. He's still an option for you. You still have Luke. You're going to have Nacho Alvarez whenever he's able to play again, assuming he can play shortstop. Again, we don't know. He hasn't done it in spring yet. He's also nicked up right now. And then Luke Waddell, who I still don't think has gotten into a game this spring at all. So let me know, which of those guys do you think should make the opening day roster, Allen or Cairo? Or does it not even matter, right? Is this something where I'm just talking into the void because there's no real options here? I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Again, you can email us, contact@bravestoday.com. In the meantime, you're listening on audio. Do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell, when we drop that next episode or when we drop another press conference from an AJ Smith-Shawver or a Chris Sale or something like that. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.